Are you looking to grow your dental practice and attract top-tier new patients? Discover the potential of digital marketing with a personalized strategy session. Join Lila Stone, the marketing director at Equa, for an exclusive 90-minute consultation. Lila and her team will dedicate 6 hours before your meeting to create a customized marketing plan specifically for your practice. This valuable opportunity is free of charge and comes with no commitments. Visit www.insuranceuntangledorg/MSM to schedule your meeting with Lila today. You'll also receive a free analysis report so you can start transforming your practice through the power of digital marketing.
You are now listening to another episode of the Insurance Untangled podcast, where we explore the various challenges faced by dental practices due to their reliance on insurance. Join us in this podcast as we dive deep into the issues surrounding dental insurance dependence and offer practical solutions and strategies to help you take control of your practice's financial future.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Insurance Untangled podcast. My name is Ben Tuinei, and I'm one of the co-hosts of this podcast. And as you know, we've created this to help practices untangle themselves from insurance. And we talk about all things insurance, as well as marketing concepts and business in general as it pertains to dentistry. And today we have a really fun episode that we're going to cover here. I have my co-host Naren with me. Naren, how are you?
I'm doing great, Ben. And how are you doing?
Doing wonderful, thank you. Always great to chat with you. We picked a pretty fun topic here. So what we decided to talk about is the topic PPOs. They're sort of an addiction. So the question is how do you break free? So the topic again, PPOs are an addiction. You need to break free is what we're going to talk about today. So Naren, let's first talk about this whole concept of PPOs being an addiction. And we don't say that to offend anybody. The reality is that when you think about even if you are a general dentist or a specialist and you're in network with insurance, it's more along the lines of it's hard to break free. It's scary. It's uncertain in terms of going to the out-of-network path or being free from insurance contracts altogether. And we get that. But we want to talk about it from the perspective of, we got to break free. And so we call it an addiction because, quite truthfully, that's what it is. So speak about that for a minute, Naren, is, why are PPOs so hard to get out of? Like, why do we feel like as practice owners, they're an addiction?
Yeah, I think to really understand this, we have to kind of go back and understand psychology and understand kind of the story of a typical practice owner. We are taught, especially anyone who's a doctor listening to this podcast, that staying busy means you are being productive, you are being successful. I mean, think about it, right? Even as a kid, who got the best grades, the kids who worked every hour of the day, not the ones who played all day and had fun all day, right? It's the hardworking people. So we started believing this idea that working hard and being busy is good for us, right? And it started in, elementary, high school, college, even dental school. I mean, you are not going to get through dental school by playing the fool. Any of you who is a practicing dentist know you really worked hard. You're one of those studious students. So that's the psychology side of it. And then when you come out of school, the PPO plan says, hey, you want new patients? Sign up. Here is a dotted line. Oh, it's only 200-page contract, but don't read the fine print, just sign up, right? And we sign up, and what does the PPO plan does? They send you new patients, right? Obviously, they don't want you to read the 200 pages or the fine print. They control the fees. They tell you how much you can charge. So let's say you do $1,000 worth of dentistry. After everything is said and done, you might only walk home with $550. Yeah, on one patient, it's okay. But imagine doing that day in and day out for the rest of your life, where almost half of what you make is not coming to you, not going to your team, not going to your practice. It's going to, these other third parties called the PPO plans. But the problem is you get caught up, right? So you're busy because you're giving up so much money. You have to work even harder to just maintain your lifestyle, maintain your profitability. Why? There was stats saying that 34% of US dentists in 2023 told us that the PPO reimbursement rates have dropped 10% or more. This is 1/3 of dentists have seen their income drop by 1/3, but their expenses go up, right? Every year expenses go up. So how do they make up? They work even harder. They see even more patients just to maintain the same expenses and same lifestyle. So every year they are getting caught up, almost like, I think addiction is one analogy, but the other analogy is like, imagine a frog in a slowly boiling pot of water, right? Every year it just heats up a little bit, like, oh, they pay you 10% less, reimbursements are less and less, your expenses are going up, but you somehow like, oh, I'll work harder. I'll maybe work 2 extra hours, or I'll see, 8 patients. 2 more patients a day or 3 more patients a day. Somehow I'll make it work, right? And then you get caught up in this trap, and then you feel like you can't get out. And of course, you're not a dentist in isolation. You are a mom or a dad. You have elderly parents to take care of. You have your kids who have bills to pay, who needs bills to be paid, the university expenses, college expenses, private school, you name it, right? So you have all these things. You just, I think get caught up in this trap and feel like you can't get out. So even though every year you're getting squeezed more by these PPO plans, you feel like you're helpless. You feel like, that's it. And then you just somehow put up with it and put up with it and put up with it. And I find that it's kind of also like in an abusive relationship. A lot of women who are in these relationships feel somehow leaving is worse off than them continuing that abusive relationship. Why? They feel like there's no other plan, there's no other way for them to survive other than to put up with this abusive, person who just beats them up or does whatever mental abuse, you name it. But they just feel like that's their only option. The other option is they're on their streets, their kids on their streets. Even though that's not true, that kind of becomes it. So I think it's easier for those of us who are not caught up in this to say, hey, you can do it, but it's not easy, till you make that first step, right? Of course, that a person in that abusive relationship steps out, starts going out with friends, and realizes the life doesn't have to be that way. They see the different lives other people around her are living, and they're like, I don't need to put up with this nonsense. So I think one of the early steps anyone in this PPO trap needs to take is to start building your marketing, because the minute you start getting new patients who are not coming from PPO plans, now you have choices. You don't have to keep taking those patients and getting paid 50 cents on the dollar. You can say, nope, I'm dropping one plan because I have enough patients who are not on plans coming to me now through marketing. So I really think, even today, even though only half of Americans are on PPO plans, a large majority of the American dentists are on PPO plans. So there's a mismatch. So there's half of the patients who are dying for a dentist who would take their full fees and see them because they're not on a PPO plan, and they don't need to be dictated by the terms of the PPO plan. But dentists somehow are fishing in the tiny pond of PPO patients versus ignoring the pond of all these patients who are not on PPO plans. So I think you just have to get out and start doing marketing and start getting good at it. And the better you get at marketing, you can keep dropping these. Start with the worst abuser, the plan that pays you the least, that is just the worst one, and then drop the next worst one. And before you know it, you get rid of all the bad plans.
Yeah, I like that. You mentioned sort of equated the relationship between insurance companies and dentists like that of an abusive relationship, which is not too far from the truth. When you look at abusive relationships, of course, we think about warning signs, right? And a classic example in abusive relationships, a big warning sign is when somebody's continuously playing the victim, right?
Yeah.
So things like that they tell you to pay attention to in an effort to make sure that you're living in a healthy relationship. When you take that methodology, or at least that sort of assessment on warning signs, what would you say are warning signs to recognize in the PPO world as a PPO provider? What warning signs do you think we should look out for from the perspective of at least drawing the conclusion that, hey, enough is enough?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you went to 10 years of education, when you include dental school, university, etc., and training. and somehow they tell you what's covered and what's not. What's, like, for example, you have to beg their permission to do the right thing for your patients, and they'll continue to say nope, nope, nope. And then eventually you get patients who don't want to do the right thing for their own health because they think you are the guy who's the bad guy trying to scam them because it's not covered by insurance. But insurance doesn't care about health. Insurance doesn't care that, you want to have that beautiful smile. Like, they don't care. They just want to do the bare minimum, right? Their business model is collect premiums, pay out as little as possible, keep everything else for themselves. The fat cats who run the insurance firm, right? So that's a great example of an abusive relationship where, like, a patient shows up one day early and they are not covered, or something that you absolutely believe needs to be covered is not covered, or you do the work and then they reject your claim. They'll keep cutting your fees, or they'll keep not increasing your fees to keep up with inflation. Like, you might have 10 years of experience in a particular field, but you are paid just like the guy who graduated from school 2 months ago. Why is that? Doesn't make any sense, right? What about all your extra qualification? What about all your... But no, for them, it's a commodity. Like, the fact that you have 10 years of experience in a particular top area means nothing to them, right? In their mind, dentistry is a commodity. So anytime you see those abusive relationships where you're not being valued, where you're not being taken care of, I think it's time to start planning your exit. Doesn't mean you quit tomorrow every plan, but start building your marketing. Start, once you have that marketing working, dropping that first PPO plan, that first abusive relationship, and then the second and the third. You might end up with one or two at the end, like the best ones of the lot, but you don't have to go all the way. But the bottom line is you get rid of as many abusive relationships as possible, starting with the worst. But you can't do that till you have options. So I really say, take ownership of your practice, your career, your life, by starting to attract the patients who need you, who appreciate you, who want you because of your skills, because of your qualifications, because of how much attention you pay for quality, or how much time you spend getting to know them, getting to know their needs and taking care of them as human beings versus just a number, as far as the PPO plan is concerned.
Yeah, I remember when I first started in dentistry, Naren, it was interesting when I would pull utilization data from clients. And I was very much trying to learn the industry, right? Trying to learn the coding and all that. And I noticed a pattern that some doctors did certain procedures on certain insured patients that weren't being performed on other people that had different insurance plans. And when I presented the question to these doctors, like, I noticed that there's a utilization pattern difference depending on the insurance category. I'm just curious as to, why. And the doctors will look at me like I was an idiot. It's like, seriously, what a stupid question. It's like, the reason why we do that is because those other procedures are not covered by the other dental plan. So we don't do them for those patients. And it really opened my eyes to the fact that, holy smokes, do insurance carriers have such a great influence on the type of care that you get, And so I think we've done
like your care may vary depending on your insurance plan, as opposed to I'll do the right thing for you,
Yeah, that's exactly right. And my son went through that, and my wife when my son was born, I noticed that too with our medical insurance. Like, seriously, like, depending on what kind of insurance, you could get good or crappy care. So I wonder about the Medicaid community, the low income families, is whether, I know this is probably going to be harsh. I'm probably going to get a lot of interesting comments about this, but it's like, you might as well write a plan that's designed with the whole eugenics component in mind, right? Because you're not giving people the care that they actually need, right? According to the doctor's expertise. You're creating a plan design that's influencing a certain type of dentistry that's based upon the insurance, not what the patients actually need. And our poor doctors
didn't get a degree in insurance, right? They got a degree in doing the right thing for their patients, about Hippocrates Oath and, all that stuff, right? It's about, doing the best for your patients, regardless of how good or bad. Yeah.
Right. And I think doctors and patients alike are victims in this system, So with that said, Naren, I always get the comment of, I think it's really difficult to drop insurance plans. Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think there's that perception? And I guess a follow up to that is, if it's hard to quit PPOs, why? Why is it so hard?
Yeah, I think two reasons. One is we get comfortable with our current way of living, current way of doing things. And that analogy I used about, the frog in the boiling pot. Why does that frog continue to stay in the boiling pot, even though it's going to just literally get boiled to death, And that's why you see happening with, PPO doctors. They are working harder and harder. They get illnesses and eventually they just are forced to retire because they just can't keep going anymore because they are doing, 50% more work and getting, half as much money versus somebody who's seeing less patients, doing quality dentistry, enjoying himself or herself and getting paid full fees, right? So I think the reason people still do that or still, put up with that is because one is they see everyone around them on PPO plans. So they go to these local meetings and they're like, oh, you should be nuts to, even think about dropping PPO plans. Like they just start believing what is possible based on what they see around them. And unfortunately, if a lot of your colleagues and stuff are on PPO plans, you will somehow start coming to the conclusion that you can't do it. Well, nobody else can, so I can't. But it's kind of like that 4-minute mile example, right? Till Mr. Bannister broke it, nobody thought it could be done. But then when Roger Bannister broke that mark, within a month, so many people broke it. Just that you have to surround yourself with people who are like the people you want to be versus the people you don't want to be, right? So in this case, join the Reducing Insurance Dependence Academy, join, the Insurance Untangled community. We have events every 3 months. We have podcasts every week. Start surrounding yourself with people like the ones who you want to be like, less dependent on insurance, not whose lives are not dictated by insurance. So that's, I think, one reason why they don't quit and one way to solve it. And second is people with choices have confidence to take action. Imagine, you don't have a choice in a matter like, for example, let's say, I know most of us can't even imagine this, but let's say you come from a family where you don't even know how you're going to pay the next month's rent, right? You might stick with a shitty job just because you are like, okay, if I lose that job, then I'm going to be on the street, right? But imagine you have started saving some money up and you have 6 months worth of savings, Now you're not as afraid anymore. You're like, okay, let me take a chance. Let me go and find that good job. I don't have to because worst case, I have 6 months rent saved up somewhere, right? What does that mean? That's about creating choice, right? Like that's about creating options. So the minute you start investing in marketing that works and you start getting new patients, you're like, I can drop at least one plan because let's say that plan is bringing in 4 patients and your marketing is bringing in 10. You're like, okay, I'm getting 10. Dropping this is not going to kill me because I'm only going to lose 4. And again, I'm losing the ones I would rather not see anyways because I only get paid pennies on the dollar versus full fees. So you're like, I have nothing to lose and I'm not going to stay busy and stay, not busy and twiddle my thumbs. I think that's the number one fear. People equate not being busy to being, failure just because of that psychological framing from the time they're like little kids. If you're busy, that means you're successful. You're doing something right. If you're not busy, but you're losing money. If you're doing, $100 worth of dentistry, but it's costing you $150 after you pay your team and everything else, you're losing money. So in that case, you don't want more of those $100 dentistry sessions because you're losing money every time you do that $100 dentistry, right? So I think partly it's kind of surrounding yourself with people who are able to think differently. Partly it's giving yourself options, like in this case, having strong marketing that's able to bring in quality patients who are not asking the question, is it covered by insurance? Because they're not even part of the PPO plans. So I think so what I'm saying is go on the offense when it comes to marketing and then surround yourself with the people you want to be versus not the people you don't want to be like. I mean, I think there's a famous quote that says, you become like, the 5 people you spend the most time with. So start spending time with people who are on this journey of reducing PPO plans. And over time, I promise you this, I've seen this hundreds of times, you will get the courage to take that first step, the second step, the third step, and just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one thing that you said there about that 4 minute mile that kind of resonated with me. It's like once that one person did that, I think what that did, Naren, is it gave other athletes the confidence of saying, "Oh, you can do that. You can achieve
Right.
that." Right? I never knew
Because
that
till
was
then,
possible. Right.
yeah, till then they believed it's not possible. They thought human physiology is such that you cannot finish
Right.
in
Yeah.
a 4 minute mile. Like just can't happen. They believed in it. Because they believed in it, it was true for them. The minute they see one guy do it, okay, he's a human too. So if he can do it, so can I.
I know it's amazing the progression of the human race. You look at the scientific community in all these
Yeah.
great scientists like Albert Einstein creating theories that were proven true 60 to 80 years after he died, and then newer scientists like, oh, we can achieve great things, right? And we push ourselves and we stretch ourselves. And I like that you use that analogy as it pertains to dropping insurance and surrounding yourselves with a good A team, because dropping insurance is nothing new. It's been around, it's been going on for decades. It just so happens to be the right time to do it from the perspective of inflation and profitability. So many practices are struggling out there, right? So you mentioned marketing. The key question is that, I know some listeners probably want some more follow-up on that. So I'll ask a question that I think they want to ask is, why do you think marketing is the real cure to distance yourself from the whole trap of being, or at least the whole, I shouldn't say trap, the whole burden, uncomfortable and abusive burden of being in network with insurance? Why is marketing the real cure?
Yeah. So marketing, I think, is a real cure for a few reasons. One is, you know, what is marketing, right? It's about helping the right patients find you and then choose you. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So if the right patients are finding you and choosing you, especially the ones who appreciate, quality health, the ones who want beautiful smiles, most of you don't go to dental school to do, one tooth fillings here and there, and to do tooth dentistry, right? You want to change lives, save somebody's life, right? You want to create beautiful smiles. You want to get advanced training. You want to get paid more for your time. In other words, if you work 2 hours, if you do implants, you might get paid a lot more than you would get paid doing fillings, for those same 2 hours. And it's not challenging, right, to do little simple, simplistic, just patchwork dentistry. It's much more rewarding and challenging to do life-changing dentistry. So I think from an emotional perspective, what I've noticed is the doctors who take that jump and say, okay, I'm going to go after, doing the dentistry I love, jumping out of bed in the morning versus like hating myself, getting into that car every morning and, going to office. Because if you hate yourself or hate the kind of dentistry you're going to do, and like you're going to be working so hard and like literally paying the fat cats at the insurance company and bringing in almost like nothing home compared to your qualifications, your experience, your knowledge, you won't even have time to talk to people because you're just so busy just doing, fix-it dentistry, that pays you peanuts. So I think marketing will start opening options. I'll give you a real true story. This is a client of mine. I'm dating myself because we still have a relationship with that practice going back to 2011. So she met me somewhere and she heard about what we do. By the way, those of you who are interested, marketing is about search engine optimization, like showing up on Google. So when these people are looking for all kinds of things you do, you show up again and again at the top of Google. So that's kind of what she wanted. She wanted to show up on Google so people are finding her. Marketing is also about, having good websites, good landing pages, good reviews. So not only are we helping people find you through search engine optimization, but also helping them choose you through these reviews and cases and so forth. Now, so she started working with us in 2011. She was a $650,000 practice working 4.5 days. This is in 2011 dollars. And she's like, hey, I have nothing to lose. I'm getting really tired and sick because I'm working so hard 4.5 days a week. I just don't want to do that anymore. Let me try marketing and see what happens. So she just hired us, and I never even spoke to her for a while because she was just busy doing her thing. We were busy doing our thing to get her to, rank on Google and so forth. And then, we would keep in touch. And then I'll just summarize the story. In less than 3 years, her practice went from 650 to 1.3 million, and she ended up working 3.5 days a week. So between 2011 to 2014. So what happened is she was getting 30 new patients a month, and she's like, I don't want to work harder, so I'm going to drop the worst PPO plan. And only after the fact did she realize she was losing money on that PPO plan anyway. So in other words, she was literally paying herself by not seeing those patients, because after everything is said and done, the amount of money she took home from those patients was net negative. So she dropped that one plan, and then next plan, and the next plan, and the next plan, and before you know it, she ended up with all plans gone except for one. I think she kept Delta Premier, which was like around 20% of her practice. The other 80% was all fee-for-service patients. So she was doing, full mouth work. She was doing, comprehensive work. She was loving her life. She was working less because these full mouth cases paid a lot more. So in 3.5 days, she was making double the money that she was making in 4.5 days. So literally she's making twice as much, working 1 day less. And of course, the practice was so successful, now buyers were lining up, and she decided to sell. So she sold the practice. And even today, this is, I guess, going back, 16 years later, we are still working with the new owner, who's obviously full fee for service and, an awesome high value, high quality practice in the DC area. So I think sometimes stories are better than theory to kind of illustrate the point. And it all started with her taking one chance, which is, let me start building up my marketing. And that created a snowball. So a lot of people will say, oh, let me just jump off the cliff and then figure out how to, turn on the parachute. That, I think, is too scary. In her case, she didn't do that. She's like, let me first turn on the parachute, which is the marketing, and then as marketing starts working, then let me jump off the cliff. So I think that's one of the reasons. I think that's a much better approach for a lot of practice owners, because it's less risky once you have new patients to drop those plans. So if you are like most people who are afraid of dropping PP plans, I would strongly recommend go down this road. Now you'll be forced to drop it. You're like, I don't want to work harder and get paid 50 cents on the dollar, so I'll start replacing the good patients with the ones I don't want by dropping 1, 2, 3, 4 plans.
Yeah, I love it. It points back to the concept of supply and demand, right? When you find another way to create your own demand, you don't need insurance companies. In fact, you don't need them now. I keep running across this number at the conventions that people are saying less than 5% of people with insurance actually find their dentist by going to the PPO directory. So that should tell you something about how patients look for their dentist. Google is number one. Social media and other avenues outside of the PPO directories. That's how patients are finding their dentist, not because you're in network. They come to you because you're in network. You got to reverse that dynamic, right? But Naren, this has been a really special episode. I like the topic. I like the theme. I like the advice. I love what you mentioned there in terms of the stories to kind of draw us, help us to relate to the concepts that you've been sharing. I just want to thank you, Naren, for an amazing episode today. And I want to thank our listeners for joining us again today on an amazing episode of the Insurance Untangled podcast. One final thing I want to mention is that if you're really thinking about heading in this direction of finding an alternative solution to patient flow, to new patient flow, check out insuranceentangled.com/MSM and request a marketing strategy meeting from Naren and his team. I can say, with the friends and clients that I have that have performed that marketing strategy meeting, it's been a game changer and an eye opener to doctors in terms of the endless possibilities of freeing yourself from insurance in a way where you do have a mechanism that addresses the new patients effectively. Naren, any final closing thoughts on that before we wrap up today?
No, I think that marketing strategy meeting would be like really, really worth your time. It's like 1 hour of your time. It's a $900 gift from us to you, insuranceuntangledcom/MSM. Get a plan, right? At the very least, now that you know what you need to do and what you can expect. And once you have that plan, whether you work with us or somebody else, you start creating choices. I really think life is about creating choices. Either you can not work on creating choices and make your life smaller and smaller and smaller, like that abusive relationship example we talked about, or start creating choices, right? And it could be one simple step as just having that conversation and at least finding out what marketing choices can you create. I'm not saying every PPO plan is bad, or I'm not saying there's no use for PPO. It's just that you don't want to be in relationships where a particular plan is abusing you, where the amount of money you make is not worth the amount of time and effort you're putting in, where they dictate everything to you and you literally lose all control as a doctor, as a healthcare provider, as a person who went into this profession wanting to save lives and make a difference. So, if those things are being threatened, start creating options. You don't have to just jump off the cliff. Just, get that parachute on, and then slowly, one by one, go down that journey. So it's anytime you can backtrack, right? You drop one plan, it doesn't work out, you can sign back up. This is not the end of the world. Trust me, they'll keep taking you back as long as you want. Like, they have no problem with that because they know a lot of doctors are leaving. So they are like desperate because, I think finally doctors are waking up and saying, I don't want to be in that, boiling water anymore. Enough is enough. I want to take control of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Those great final thoughts there, Naren, on today's episode. Really appreciate that. Again, to our listeners, insuranceuntangledcom/MSM to request a complimentary marketing strategy meeting. Thank you again, Naren, and thank you to all our listeners for joining us today on another amazing episode of the Insurance Untangled podcast. Don't forget to like and share this episode. Give us some reviews. 5 stars will be wonderful. That'll help other doctors find our content online. And then as well as don't forget our quarterly webinars that we put on every quarter. This next one will be June 2025. Those dates, including registration, will be found on the Insurance Untangled website. Until we meet again, folks, thank you for joining us, and we wish all of you the very best of success. Take care now.